with his 15th book from Dallas, Texas. Scott Schilling, how you doing today?
Doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me here. Really excited to share.
I've been excited about this book a long time. You know, when I moved to Dallas 2 years ago, you're the first business person I looked up. We had been friends on Facebook a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That Sucks, What Now? What's up with that title?
Well, it's really funny. You know that I'd been working on the book for a long time, and there's so many different concepts in the book, and I really felt like I was honing in on the title and all that. Was finally talking to a friend one day that was a little bit of a pre-reader when I had portions of it done. And they said, "Man, I never realized you went through this much different stuff in your life." And I said, "Well, you don't wear all your butt kickings on your sleeve. It's just not the way you do it, right?" And he said, "Yeah, but you've come through them. I didn't know, and I would have never known. What did you say to yourself after each of these events?" And without thinking, I just went, "That sucks. What now?" And he goes, "Man, that's an awesome name for the book." And I said, "But I don't talk like that." He said, "That's why it's really especially an awesome title for you, because you don't talk like that." And I said, "Well, I don't see it as a negative." He goes, "Well, I don't either." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, that sucks is a simple realization that I wish it would have happened differently than it did. We all have those moments. And then the what now is, you know what? No time to sit around and have a pity party. It's time to get to work and get after it. So that sucks. What now?" Right? Is actually a positive response. We're kind of going through one of those situations in our world right now. It's one of those, well, that sucks. What now? Where do we go?
It's a perfect time to launch it. Real world solutions to getting through what you're going through. I kind of want to set you up properly because you've got so much quality content to share here. And a lot of people might be wondering, who is Scott Schilling? Well, you've shared the stage with some of the largest events in the world. You've shared the stage with Laura Bush, former First Lady, Les Brown, Jack Canfield, General Colin Powell, Susie Orman, Peter Lord, Zig Ziglar, or Peter Lowe, Zig Ziglar, nearly 2,500 live events. And as an internationally accomplished and entertaining presenter, you've spoken to hundreds of thousands of attendees across a range of industries. One of your most popular books, Without Customers, You Got Nothing. I love that. But here today, I know it's helped a lot of business owners. How did you learn to face the challenges that you share in your book, Scott, head on? I mean, because you've had some major stuff happen, and you've came out a lot better for facing them.
Well, it's interesting because I've been asked that, by a number of people, and I think part of it is I grew up playing 5 sports, and I had some of the just amazing coaches who, they chewed on you when they needed to chew on you, and they barked at you when they needed to bark, and they congratulated you and when you deserved it, right? And so I think part of it is I learned throughout growing up that stuff was going to happen to you. Sometimes you do the right things and the wrong things happen. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. All sorts of things like that. And so you really get to the point where if you take any kind of athletic background, and again, I was fortunate enough to play for Coach Hayden Fry at the University of Iowa, an absolutely amazing legend in his coaching style. And there wasn't a man who I think loved his team more. He was just that kind of guy, right? No, he chewed on you plenty.
Right.
If you didn't do it right, he chewed all over you. But at the same time, there's nobody who cared more for you and your future and everything going forward. And so that's actually what held up the book for a little while. Is I didn't think the way I addressed these things was necessarily special. It's just what you learn to do, right? And then when you have some pre-readers, you have some people look at it and go, "How did you even think of doing that?" And I was like, "Doesn't everybody?" And they go, "No." And so that's what really became the holy cow, this really does have some pretty significant value for others to be able to learn from my experience. Experience is a great teacher. It's just a very expensive teacher.
Very expensive, and we can learn from your knowledge and your wisdom here. And that sucks. What now is a concept that came out of you during those unimaginable challenges in life. I know here in a little bit you're going to talk to us about something proprietary, and that is called an evidence log, where you, as an executive coach and international trainer and speaker, you've used that philosophy and that technology, but you bring a combination of 35 plus years to coaching, sales and marketing, and training to corporations, business owners, entrepreneurs, and individuals. You're highly sought after in propelling businesses forward. One client, for example, that you propelled from 8 million in annual revenue to almost 80 million in just under 6 years. What is this thing I keep hearing about and reading from you, the evidence log, and why is it, Scott, so important in a business and in someone's life?
Well, Michael, as you know, my spiritual walk's very important to me, and within business, quite frankly, nobody. It's not my job to get you to believe what I believe. It is my job to be a living example of what I believe. And the fact of the matter is, hey, Bill, nice of you to chime in. What's really exciting about it is nobody would be in business without faith. Faith, by definition, is belief in the unseen, assurance of the unknown. So the bottom line is you would never be in business because there's no proof that anybody will ever come to do business with you. There is no proof that you will ever sell anything or do anything going forward, right? So the point is you have faith, whatever that belief is for you, that's great. But the point is that faith is in advance of the event taking place. And so what evidence logs do is they actually now tie together the reason that you had faith in the beginning. In other words, the belief you had in advance of the event ever taking place. The reason that I suggest that people keep an evidence log is because when then that piece of faith that you had out in advance comes true, you evidence it. You actually put it down to then strengthen your faith the next go around. As an example, the same definition works for the word fear. Is belief in the unseen, assurance of the unknown, but that's belief in the negative. I would choose to have belief in the positive with faith. And again, so now as I have that faith and good things happen to me, I then evidence those things to then encourage me to have even more faith going forward. This is how we continue to build ourselves.
Well, that's really powerful, and I love what you're saying there. And people can actually, the book is launching today. And Scott Schilling online, we're putting the banner up here. People can get it on Amazon. The ebook's available, and you've got Jack Canfield has endorsed your book. Now, tell me a little bit about the backstory, because I know you've shared the stage with him. People are really excited. You're speaking, and for years you've done sales training, leadership. Speaking is a big part of what you do. Coaching is a big part of what you do. What did Jack Canfield say about you in the book?
Well, number one, he wrote the foreword, which is, I'm honored that he would do that. He wrote some things that actually make me cry. So I can't wait till somebody else reads it, because it's very touching. I mean, he has contributed a lot to my life. What many people don't realize is at a time when I wanted to change professions and become a professional speaker, I had said to a friend of mine who was a promoter, if you ever have any openings, I would love to have the opportunity. And so he called me about 6 weeks before an event, and he said, were you serious about that? I said, yeah, why? He said, I not only have one opening, I have two. I'll pay you 2 fees. And I said, I'm in. And he goes, you don't even want to know where it is? I said, it's irrelevant. I asked you, you came back to me. And I said, where is it? And he said, it's in Toronto in 6 weeks. Well, this was 2003 when the SARS virus had hit Toronto. And literally 2 speakers had canceled because quote unquote, they weren't going to put their life at risk to go speak at this event. And he said, "Are you sure now that I've told you about the SARS virus?" And I said, "Well, I can either die on stage or die of SARS. Let's go." And that was started my speaking career. Well, what happened was Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen were the keynotes, the lead at that event. They came into my room, not only one talk, but both talks. And afterwards, Jack walked up to me and he said, "Son," and I love telling this story because I get to say Jack Canfield called me son, but he said, "Son, God has granted you talents and capabilities that most people don't have. And if you don't use those talents and capabilities, you're robbing humanity, you're cheating humanity. In fact, you're being selfish." And I said, "And so what is that I'm supposed to do with this?" He said, "If you're not out speaking professionally full time, you're wasting what God has granted you." And I basically went back from that event, quit, and went out speaking full time. And then Mark was so gracious. He was doing his mega speaking events back in those days. And he invited me to come to his mega speaking event. Well, that's ultimately where I met my speaking mentor, John Childers. And I mean, my world changed. It's where I met Cynthia Kersey, which caused me to write my first book, Talking with Giants. It's this string of events. So again, we're sitting here. It's one of the things I said on a radio show in London yesterday was Einstein said, "In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity." My
Beautiful.
speaking career was launched because of the SARS virus, because of other people making choices to not attend. Well, I took the act to attend. We're now coming through another horrendous thing, quite frankly, something that's unprecedented that none of us have ever dealt with before, a pandemic like this. Within the midst of every crisis comes great opportunity. Now is that time.
Well, it's brilliant, and it's wonderful that you're launching again. You know, a lot of people are setting back in fear, and so I think the beautiful thing about it now is there's people are hungry for content. You know, Netflix is booming, Zoom is booming, and book sales are through the roof. We were going to launch your book later in the year, and you said, "Let's launch it now." And 192 pages of rock solid content you have here. And hold that up because people can now buy it on Amazon. It's launch today, the ebook and the print book. And actually, the ebook is a special introductory price. Grab it. Now, you're here in Dallas, Texas, where I'm at, and we're excited about, you know, virtual events. But when do you think this pandemic will be over? I know you've got a lot of stages to speak on this year. And what's your gut feeling on how long are we going to be stuck in this?
Well, there are a whole lot of people that are a whole lot smarter about that than I am. And so I'm just listening to their guidance and all the different things they're doing. I think the reality is business will never be done the same going forward. As much as we would like to be back on stage, I think the definition of what a stage is changing tremendously. I think that, I know that I have, a 500 seat room with Zoom anytime.
Yeah.
And just think of being able to take 500 people from around the world. I would rather actually do more talks more often to serve more people. And while I would love to be back on stage, that guidance will come from the learned health officials and folks like that. But that doesn't mean, it was funny. One of my buddies posted the other day and he said, pop quiz, how many Zooms have you done this week? Right. And somebody went, I did 6. Somebody said, I did 8. Somebody said, oh, I went crazy. I did 12. And they said, how many did you do? And I said, 42. And that was the truth. I mean, I had done 42 Zooms.
You're a master sales trainer. It's all about the numbers. You've been teaching that for a long time. With this, your 15th book, your first book, or one of your best books ever, was Without Customers, You Got Nothing. Now, you had another book there, had a funny number like 104. What was that series about?
Well, it's really about, we were trying to give people answers in a bite, the way people learn, the way people communicate information has changed. You used to be able to tell a fairly significant story and get the point across. Now people want 90 seconds or less,
Yeah.
many times, right? So it was 104 tips, techniques, and strategies on how to sell more with less effort. And so it was literally bite size, soundbite kind of concepts that are very applicable. In other words, you could put them into action very well. But the point becomes, how do we communicate a message? How do we share? What I've found is it's really funny because everybody says, "What do I say to somebody?"
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is pretty simple. Stop saying anything. Start asking questions.
I love that.
Ask what their needs are, ask what their wants are, ask what their desires are. It's really kind of what I did with That Sucks What Now, because while the book chronicles a number of issues in my life, it wasn't designed to talk about my life. It was designed to share the solutions that came out of living through those things, including a near-death experience. And as I said, as we did a show the other day, I mean, when you hear for 8 straight days, you shouldn't be alive
Mm.
from the doctors. At
Mhm.
some point, I got frustrated and I said, "Sorry to disappoint you. I'm just an overachiever. I lived."
I
It,
love that.
well, it was one of those things that you just get frustrated, right? You just, enough's enough. Why not celebrate why I'm alive? Why not try to understand why I'm alive? Stop trying to tell me I shouldn't be, right? And that's another part of what the book is about, because when I came out of all this, because I lived through something that most people don't, and I'm very blessed for that. I'm very grateful, and I take none of it for granted. But when I searched, as an example, how long will it take before I can drive again? And it says many times when people have the injury you have, they will never drive again and never regain their professional career.
Mm.
Well, that wasn't the answer I wanted to see. And so I looked up another one. How long will it take before I gain my balance, be able to stand on stage and deliver a talk? Well, again, with the injury you have, many people never regain the ability to speak or their balance or their professional careers. And so you have to just get accustomed to it. Bad answer. I'm not taking that answer. And so I said, well, if other people are as fortunate as I am to have come through this, they need some better answers. They need So I started documenting how I was able to live through some of this stuff in the real world ways of managing, again, just so many different things, right? There's so much content available today. Unfortunately, the vast majority of it is not on the positive side. I don't even like saying the word. If you're ever around me for a period of time, you'll see I'll say things like there's the good stuff and then there's the less than good stuff. I don't even want to get the other junk going. And there's so much negative banter about so many things anymore that we have the opportunity to change that with our languaging. Bill Walsh was one of those guys that said it many years ago. The quality of your life is the quality of your communications.
That's
Eric,
true.
Eric Swanson says the same thing, right?
Mhm.
It's if you have an attitude of awesomeness shows up, right? So
Well, I think we're the great equalizer in a world filled with negativity. And right now, much of the world does have a negative, really a real fear base. And so you've actually got some stuff, Scott, in the book that you haven't shared with anybody, and you share it in the book. Why the deliberated pause there?
because of the story I'm about to share with it. You and I have had this conversation that this is really God's book. This is God's book coming through me. And so I was writing a number of different things, and all of a sudden I felt compelled to reveal some things that literally I had never revealed to anybody. And I mean anybody, very seriously. And so it was actually one of the editors was reading the book and said, "This is absolutely amazing. Number one, how did I not know this? How did nobody know this?" And I said, "Well, it was pretty simple. I didn't tell anybody about it." And they said, has Peggy read the book? Peggy's my wife. And I'm in, Eric. Peggy's my wife. And I said, "Oh no, I didn't have Peggy read the book," because I kind of wrote it in this, at that portion. I kind of had this like spiritual download that this needs to be in the book, right? So I wrote it. Well, I didn't think about it. I just followed what I was supposed to do, or what I felt I was supposed to do. And anyway, so I printed off a copy and gave it to my wife. And now we almost 25 years of marriage now. And I handed it to her and she looked at me. She had this look on her face. And I go, "Oh God," she read that part. And she goes, "How do I not know this?" And let me just, anybody who's got a pen and paper, write this down. This is the wrong guy answer. Just so you know, I'm telling you, this is a learning point right here. I said, "Nobody knows this information." To which her response, "I'm not nobody." and that was just a bad guy answer, right? I literally hadn't thought about it being in the book. But here's what I've found, again, from pre-readers and people who have already gotten the book. They're so grateful. And what's really interesting is a mutual friend of all of ours just came out with a book, and he revealed the exact same thing for the first time in his life. And so it was funny. We were talking the other day. We were doing a hostage exchange of our books, right? And he goes, "I revealed this in my book." And I said, "So did I." And it was really funny that neither one of us knew about the case for each other, right? So it was, the point is that there were times, there are things in the book where literally, and it was so funny because I was typing and I typed out the answer, or I typed what I was typing and I erased it. And I retyped it and I erased it.
Yeah.
And I retyped it and I said, "Well, heck, it's not my book anyway."
There you go.
So I just kind of, it's funny how when you're in the mode of the only thing you really want to do is serve people through what's in the book, right?
Yeah. Now you rely a lot on your faith. You talk about your faith. How do you see this book opening doors for you? Because you've been a speaker, a trainer, a coach for a lot of years, but where do you see now, pandemic or not, virtual or in person, where do you see the next 36 months for Scott Schilling? What's your core message going to be to people?
Well, I think a big part of it is live your truth. And for me, again, I found a lot of that. I found my spiritual path really started speaking in Singapore when, this is many years ago, when it was at the time the biggest audience I had ever been in front of, about 5,000 people or so. And I felt like I needed some extra help. So I created a pre-event prayer backstage, which is in the book. And then I created it, I gave it, and then I went on stage, and all of a sudden I gave it to the audience immediately. And it was like this stunned, what happened there kind of thing, right? Well, as it turned out, being a Christian, 4 Muslim women came up to me afterwards, in full regalia at the bottom of the stairs waiting for me, and said, "Mr. Scott, can we get our picture made with you?" And I said, "Well, certainly, that would be great, but hear my heart. I didn't think you did a lot of that." And they said, "We don't. We only take pictures of people or things we want to honor." And I said, "Well, that's very nice. Well, why would you want to honor me?" And they said, "Because you made us cry."
Mm.
And I said, okay, now I'm confused. You want to honor me because I made you cry? And they said, for the first time in our lives, you encouraged us to have faith. You didn't
Mhm.
try to convert us. For that, we honor you. And so I've used this story many times since. What if those 4 Muslim women were married to the worst terrorist in Southeast Asia? No way to prove it, no way to disprove it. What if because of that they said there's one Christian, one Westerner that wasn't so bad? And what
Mm.
if because of that, some heinous act was either lessened or not done at all? Again, no way to prove it, no way to disprove it. What
Mhm.
if we were all just a living example we've been asked to be of whatever our faith is? I spoke at an event. In fact, you were there. I came off stage and a lady came up to me and she goes, "How do you have the courage to lead with faith?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty simple. I only work for one guy, and I've learned I'm allergic to lightning." And, and she started laughing, and that really becomes it. I think going forward, we have to be true to ourselves. I lived through a near-death event that very few people live through. That tells me, and I'm just a guy, that tells me that somebody else's hand was in that way beyond my pay grade. And therefore, I work for that guy. And wherever he's going to send me, whatever I can do to be true to this. Again, not my job to get you to believe what I believe. It is my job to encourage you to believe. And if you want to talk to me about what I believe, I'm more than willing to do that. And I think that that's the biggest thing going forward at this point. Again, that same uh, event series the next month in a different city, a woman came up to me afterwards. I did the exact same talk. And a woman came up to me and she said, "I just want to thank you. You gave me my life back." And
Mm.
I said, "Well, explain that to me. How'd I do that?" And she said, "Well, I'm a cancer survivor." And I said, "Well, it sounds like you already have your life back." She said, "You would think so. But because I was one of 12 women to go into chemo at the exact same time, basically only one of them lived, me. And so I have such survivor's guilt that I had dropped into the deepest depression of my life, far worse than the cancer itself."
Mm.
But today on stage, you said God's plan and timing is perfect and that
Mhm.
all things work together for my good. And I
Mhm.
immediately felt the chains break off my wrist and I felt my life come back because I'm supposed to use my story to help other women fight through survivor's guilt and depression. And I
Wow.
just want to thank you. So,
Wow.
what do I think I'm going to be doing? I think I'm going to be sharing a life's worth of stories to serve people to help encourage them, which is again, and I know you've had a little frustration with me because this book was supposed to be out earlier. But I even made that statement. I said, "Michael, you can't have a book that's foundation is God's plan and timing is perfect
Mm.
and all things work together for my good and then be upset about it launching or not launching." And
Yeah.
if you think about, we were going to do that before Christmas because we thought it was such a perfect book for Christmas.
Yeah.
But what is the book perfect for? The pandemic.
It's perfect time. It's perfect time, guys. Go to Amazon right now. Type in Scott Schilling. Grab your ebook, special promotional price today and today only, and then get a print copy. And Scott's going to sign it for you. He's in Dallas, Texas. So we're going to be doing events in Dallas, Texas when we're allowed to do events again pretty soon. And Scott, what would you say if you could go back in a time machine 40 years and give the younger version of yourself some advice today, what would you say to the younger Scott?
Man, follow your heart right away. Stop letting people try to talk you out of what you want to do. I was quote unquote had the opportunity not quite 40 years ago, but right around that time to go out and be a professional speaker. And because I was already training in corporate America. And I said, who would ever want to travel like that? Who would ever want to do that? And then now, 18 years ago, I became a professional speaker, and that's what I've done ever since. So, I mean, at the time, I think the key piece of information is find out what really excites you and really what wakes you up in the morning, what keeps you up at night, what do you love to do, and and my guess is part of that's going to be to be of service of other people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then utilize the talents and capabilities you've been granted fully. The other thing is live it full out.
Yeah.
I mean, just again, I'm very blessed to have come through a near-death experience. The reason they call them near-death is because most people die. There's never a way of knowing when that's going to be. And so I would say play full out for all the right reasons. Do it the right way. I'm not saying being just a crazy butt, but really utilize the talents and capabilities you've been granted to do the things that make your heart go pitter pat. And if I can help in any way, reach out. I'd love to guide you. We got a lot of millennials right now, Michael, that are out there searching.
They are.
And they think that all us boomers hate them. And only most boomers hate them. No, I'm kidding. No, they really don't. I mean, this is part of
you got a lot to give. That sucks. What now? Real world solutions for getting through what you're going through. Reach out to Scott and he'll set up a time to meet with you and coach you and direct you and give you some real world answers. Scott, thanks so much for taking time out with us here at Beyond Publishing on the Author Spotlight. Really proud and happy to be your publisher and very excited to have you speaking on our stages around the world and launching your book around the world. So Spanish.
I appreciate you, Michael. Everything you've done. You're awesome.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you and thanks so much for launching during the pandemic. You're right. We wanted to launch at Christmas and you said, well, let's do it in time. And here we are. Perfect timing. So thanks so much, Scott. And thanks for all the fun comments, guys, the great comments there. And Scott, I know you're going to be on a lot of stages in 2020 and 2021. Congrats on the book.
Thanks, buddy.
Sucks. What now? Perfect timing.